You ever feel it? That invisible weight on your shoulders, the one you can't explain. But it's there, not a burden you carry in your hands, but one that clings to your mind. 1,000 thoughts, a million expectations, voices, not loud, but constant. You should be better, you should have more, you should do more. We live in a world that celebrates accumulation. More goals, more hustle, more validation. But the truth, real peace doesn't come from adding more. It comes from letting go. Letting go, that quiet, powerful act we all fear and yet crave. Not because it's dramatic, not because it gets applause, but because it sets you free. In this video, you'll discover 7 things you might need to quietly remove from your life. No drama, no guilt, no need for explanation, just a quiet revolution. One that starts with a decision only you can make. I want to tell you a secret, one I learned the hard way. For years, I thought inner peace was a destination. A beach, a mountain cabin, a perfect routine. But peace is subtraction. It's the art of less. And that's when I found Stoicism. Not a religion, not a trend, but a way of thinking, sharpened over centuries, that says, you don't control the world, but you can control what you carry. You can control what you keep. And, more importantly, what you release. See, Stoicism isn't about being emotionless. It's about having clarity. It's about seeing your life, your chaos, your doubts, your distractions, and asking, does this help me live better? And if the answer is no, you let it go. But here's the catch, letting go isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet shift in energy. You stop texting someone who drains you. You stop chasing applause that never satisfies. You stop fighting battles that were never yours to begin with. No dramatic exit, no announcement, just peace. Letting go is not weakness. It's not giving up. It's recognizing that not everything, or everyone, deserves space in your life. Not everything deserves your energy, your sleep, your sanity. I remember the moment I first practiced this. It was a friendship I held on to for too long. We weren't toxic, just misaligned. And every time we talked, I felt smaller. I kept showing up, hoping something would change, until one day, I realized peace wasn't going to arrive with more effort. It was waiting behind a door I refused to close. So I closed it, quietly, no anger, just love and release. And you know what I felt? Not loss, not guilt, but space. Space to breathe, to grow, to be. That's what letting go creates, space. And in that space, we finally hear the truth that's been whispering all along. You are not what you carry. You are not your past. You are not every relationship that didn't last. You are not your mistakes. You are what you choose to hold on to. Stoicism teaches us that every emotion, every impulse, every attachment is something we can examine. We don't have to react. We don't have to cling. We can step back, observe, decide, and this isn't just theory. It's survival, because in a world that's constantly screaming, more, Learning how to let go is rebellion, letting go of comparison, so you can finally live your own damn life. Letting go of resentment, because you deserve peace more than you deserve closure. Letting go of perfection, because flaws don't make you less, they make you real. Letting go of overthinking, because most of the battles you fight are just shadows. Letting go of people who don't clap when you win. Letting go of the past version of you that settled for less. Letting go of urgency, because not everything is as urgent as your anxiety says it is. This is not easy. This is not instant. This is a practice, like breathwork for your soul, like spring cleaning, but for your inner world. You begin by asking, what have I been carrying that no longer serves me? And then, you put it down. You might shake, you might cry, you might feel like you've lost part of yourself. But let me tell you something. That part was never really you. It was just noise. Real you is underneath. And once the clutter is gone, you meet yourself again. Still, quiet, clear. Peace isn't the end. Peace is the beginning. But it only starts when you stop holding on to what was never meant to stay. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you 7 quiet subtractions. 7 things that might be hiding in your life right now, dressed up as obligations, disguised as love, wearing the mask of ambition. But beneath them, drain, noise, distraction, and when we remove them, not with anger, but with intention, we don't just feel lighter, we become more us. So breathe. This is the part you've been craving. Not one more hack, not one more rule, just a moment of truth. Because letting go is how peace begins. And once it begins, it spreads. Helen sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling over a stack of legal papers. Her daughter's divorce had turned into a storm, custody hearings, financial chaos, emotional outbursts, and Helen was in the eye of it all. Not because she had to be, but because she chose to carry it. Every phone call at midnight, every lawyer fee she offered to cover, every angry text from her daughter's ex that she read and internalized. It wasn't her divorce, but she was living it like it was. And I remember watching her unravel, not from her own problems, but from shouldering someone else's. This is what happens when we confuse love with self-sacrifice. When we believe that to support someone, we must bleed for them. But there's a powerful truth I've come to learn. You can love someone deeply, fiercely, unconditionally, and still refuse to drown in their storm. That's not cold, that's clarity. There's a Stoic line that changed everything for me. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. And that's it. Not every fire is yours to put out. Not every pain is yours to absorb. And definitely not every crisis requires your soul as collateral." Supporting someone means walking beside them, not crawling under their burdens while they ride on your back. There's a line between empathy and enmeshment, and when that line blurs, your peace becomes the casualty. Helen meant well, but in trying to fix everything for her daughter, she forgot to protect the one thing that kept her strong, herself. Epictetus said, Some things are up to us, and some things are not, and I think we forget that when emotions run high, we rush in to solve, to save, to shield, but often, that's just ego dressed as kindness, because deep down, we believe if we don't help, we're heartless. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back. Let them walk their path. Let them stumble. Let them cry. Be there, but don't become their foundation. Because when you carry someone too long, they forget how to walk, and you forget who you are. I've done it. I've let someone else's chaos hijack my peace. I've gone to bed sick over someone else's choices. I've sacrificed time, money, energy, even my self-respect, all in the name of being supportive. But all it really did was leave two people drowning instead of one. So here's the lesson. Your peace matters. Your sanity is not a bargaining chip. You can love fully and still set boundaries. You can show up without falling apart. Because real support isn't martyrdom. It's presence. And real love doesn't require your suffering. It requires your strength. Let them face their storm. Let them grow. You stay grounded. That's not selfish. That's wise. How many times have you said, yes, while your heart was quietly screaming, no? Not because you wanted to, not because you could, but because the weight of guilt felt heavier than the cost of obedience. It's a silent war, a nod when you mean to shake your head, a smile when you feel the urge to walk away, sure, no problem, when every fiber of your being is begging you to say, I can't, not today. Peter was 73 when he fell off the ladder. His grandson had asked him to help hang lights for a school event. It wasn't a big job, just a few decorations on the porch. But Peter's knees weren't what they used to be. His back ached from years of labor. And yet, when his grandson asked, he didn't hesitate, not because he felt capable, but because he didn't know how to say no, because the idea of disappointing someone he loved felt worse than the pain in his joints. So he climbed, he stretched, he slipped, and he fell. 2 fractured ribs, 6 weeks of recovery, all because he couldn't utter one simple word, no. I used to admire people who always said yes. I thought it meant they were kind, selfless, loving, but now I see it differently. Now I see people pleasing for what it really is, a slow erosion of the self. A fear-based response, a survival tactic we picked up somewhere along the way, usually as kids, because somewhere, someone taught us that our value lies in our usefulness, that love is earned through compliance, that no is rude, cold, selfish. But what if we've been wrong? Paulo Coelho once wrote, when you say yes to others, make sure you are not saying no to yourself. And when I first read that, it hit me like a punch to the chest, because I realized how often I had betrayed myself in the name of politeness. I realized how many days I had given away to people, to plans, to priorities that weren't mine, and how little of myself was left at the end. Saying no isn't rejection, it's a boundary. It's not shutting the door on people. It's shutting the door on resentment, burnout, end bitterness. You don't have to explain. You don't need to justify your reasons. You are allowed to protect your time, your body, your peace. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." How often have we done the opposite? How often have we forced ourselves into situations that didn't feel right? Dinners we didn't want to attend, favors we didn't want to give, responsibilities we weren't equipped to carry, simply because the thought of saying no made us feel like a bad person. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors with locks. And locks aren't meant to keep everyone out. They're meant to protect what's inside. Saying no is how you tell the world, I matter too. My time, my health, my energy, my priorities. Brené Brown said it best. Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. And that's where the real fear lives, isn't it? In the disappointment. We're so afraid of being seen as difficult, selfish, ungrateful, that we contort ourselves into impossible shapes just to keep everyone else happy. But at what cost? I once agreed to take on a project that I knew, deep down, I didn't have the capacity for. I was exhausted, my plate was full, but I smiled and said, "Of course, I'd love to help," and for the next 3 weeks, I spiraled, my sleep suffered, my mood darkened, I resented the work, I resented the person who asked. But the truth, I was angry at myself, because I knew better. I knew I should have said no. But I was afraid of the silence that might follow, afraid of not being liked. And that's the trap. We think saying yes will make people love us. But real love, the kind that's rooted in mutual respect, doesn't require self-abandonment. It honors the no. It accepts it, and if it doesn't, then maybe it was never love to begin with. Imagine a life where your yes means something, because it's not automatic, because it's deliberate, because it's grounded in choice, not fear. That's the power of no. It creates integrity, it creates space, it creates freedom. The next time someone asks for your time, your energy, your help, pause, listen to your body, notice the tightness in your chest, the sinking in your gut. Ask yourself, if I say yes, what am I saying no to? Because every yes is a trade, and your life is not a charity auction. You don't owe your presence to everyone who asks for it. You are not responsible for everyone's happiness. You are not a machine for their convenience. You are allowed to rest, to decline, to prioritize. You are allowed to be whole, even if that means disappointing someone else for a moment. No isn't the end of a relationship. It's the beginning of an honest one. It's how you show people who you really are. And it's how you show yourself that your needs are valid, your voice matters, and your boundaries are sacred. Peter's fall wasn't just physical. It was symbolic. A man raised in a culture that taught him to say yes, no matter the cost. But maybe his story can be our reminder that saying no isn't selfish, it's survival, it's clarity, it's love in its truest, bravest form. So say no, not with anger, not with fear, but with peace, Say it with kindness. Say it with conviction. Say it because you finally learned. Your life is not a canvas for everyone else to paint on. Say no, because you deserve to protect what's yours. Sometimes the most haunting ghost is the person you used to be. That version of you from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when your eyes looked less tired in the mirror, when your ambition still burned hot, when you believed anything was possible. And now, here you are, looking back, comparing everything to a time that no longer exists, measuring your worth against a memory, and wondering if the best parts of you were left behind. But the past has a funny way of dressing itself up, doesn't it? Nostalgia doesn't play fair. It edits. It crops out the pain. It lowers the volume on the struggle and turns up the brightness on every smile. Every success, every fleeting moment of joy, until what you remember isn't what actually happened, but what you needed to remember. You look back at your younger self and think, I had it all figured out then. But did you? Or were you just too young to realize how messy things already were? Seneca once said, what is to come is uncertain. Live immediately. But that's hard to do when your mind keeps time traveling. When your present feels like a disappointment and your past feels like a dream. I know that feeling. I've lived in it. I've found myself scrolling through old photos, rereading old journals, watching old videos, like some archaeologist digging for pieces of a lost identity. Searching for that version of me who used to smile more, used to create more, used to believe more. But the truth is, that version of me is gone, and maybe that's okay. We're not meant to stay the same. And yet, so many of us grieve the loss of our former selves like it was some kind of death. But maybe it wasn't a death. Maybe it was a transformation. Maybe the things you've survived, the heartbreaks, the failures, the quiet mornings of doubt, maybe they didn't break you. Maybe they just reshaped you. There's a quote by Eckhart Tolle that I carry with me. You cannot find yourself in the past or future. The only place where you can find yourself is in the now. And he's right, because your power doesn't live in a photograph. It doesn't exist in a memory. It's not locked inside some highlight reel from a different chapter of your life. Your power is now, this moment, this breath, but it's hard to embrace the now when your identity is still tethered to who you were. The athlete, the artist, the lover, the risk-taker, the believer. So what happens when those labels no longer fit? Who are you without them? This is where it gets uncomfortable. Because when you cling to the past, you don't just hold on to memories, you hold on to definitions. And when life inevitably changes, those definitions become cages. You start saying things like, I used to be spontaneous, or I used to feel alive, as if those parts of you were lost in time instead of hidden underneath fear, routine, and resignation. But what if those parts of you aren't lost? What if they're just waiting to be reclaimed, not by going back, but by going inward? You are not who you used to be. And that's not a tragedy. That's growth. The past version of you didn't have today's wisdom, today's perspective, today's resilience. They may have had youth, but you have depth, and there is beauty in that. letting go of who you used to be doesn't mean you erase them. It means you thank them. You say, "Thank you for getting me here." And then, you take the wheel, because no matter how bright the past feels, you don't live there anymore. That chapter is written, ink dried, memory sealed. When I was younger, I thought I had forever. I moved fast. I said yes to everything. I believed in magic, and when life hit me hard, as it always does, I lost pieces of that innocence. I grieved for it. I tried to get it back. But what I eventually learned was this. The goal is not to go back to who you were. It's to honor who you've become. The present moment is the only real thing we ever have, but it's also the hardest to hold on to, because it asks us to let go of all the stories, the ones where we were better, the ones where things were easier. It asks us to stop romanticizing what was, and to start building what is. There's a moment in everyone's life where the old you can't carry you forward anymore. That's not failure. That's evolution. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to outgrow people, dreams, beliefs, even versions of yourself that once felt permanent. I used to think I was chasing who I used to be. But what I realized is, I was avoiding who I was becoming. Because growth is uncomfortable. It's raw. It strips away illusions. But it also gives you something real. Something earned. Something unshakable. So stop apologizing for the fact that you're not the same. Celebrate it. Let go of the timelines you created. Let go of the pressure to live up to your old highlight reel. Let go of the identity that no longer fits. You're not falling behind. You're arriving at a deeper version of yourself. Seneca also wrote, "Begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life." Maybe today is a good day to begin again, not by chasing the past, but by stepping fully into the present, by owning who you are, right now, flawed, evolving, real. You don't have to be who you were, you just have to be here. Because this moment, this breath, this version of you, is not a lesser one. It's the only one that's real. There's a silence that settles in when your children grow up and grow distant. A quiet kind of ache that doesn't scream, but hums beneath the surface. You find yourself standing in the hallway outside their old room, the one you used to knock on softly before bedtime. Now it's just a guest room, or storage, or empty, and even if they still call sometimes, even if they still visit, the rhythm of your days feels off, like you lost a job you loved, but no one gave you time to grieve it. You were once the center of their world. Now, you're a planet in a distant orbit, seen, maybe, but no longer central. And it hurts more than you expected. You spent years being their everything, their nurse, their counselor, their advocate, their protector. You knew what they needed before they could form words. You gave up sleep, comfort, time, parts of yourself, willingly, joyfully, because that's what love does, right? But what happens when that love becomes your identity? What happens when the person you are is so wrapped up in who they were, your child, your baby, your reason, that you forget who you are without them? It's a question I've watched many wrestle with, and one I've felt personally. You see, love, real, deep, transformative love, can be a light or a chain, and the line between the two is thinner than we think. Khalil Gibran wrote, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you but not from you, and though they are with you, yet they belong not to you." The first time I read those words, I nodded in that polite way people do when something sounds poetic. But I didn't really understand them. Not until years later, when I saw a mother weep quietly in the back row of her son's wedding. Not from joy, but because she felt replaced, forgotten, as if her chapter had ended the moment his began. That's when it hit me. Emotional dependence on our children is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just the inability to see ourselves apart from them. Sometimes it's measuring our worth by how often they call, how much they share, how deeply they still need us, and when they stop needing us, or need us in different, quieter ways, we feel lost, rejected, left behind. But the truth is, they didn't abandon us. They grew. They're supposed to. That was the goal all along, wasn't it? To raise someone strong enough to walk away and build a life without you holding their hand. The hard part is, no one tells you how lonely that success might feel. So here's the question I had to ask myself. Is love about control? Or is love about freedom? Because if it's freedom, and I believe it is, then the most loving thing we can do for our children is to let them go. Fully, without resentment, not because we don't care, but because we trust that the love we gave them is already stitched into their bones. That they carry us even when they're not near. That we are present in the way they treat others, the way they show up for life, the way they speak kindly in hard moments. But more than that, and this is the part no one talks about, the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to find an identity that isn't just someone's parent. Because you are still a person, a whole one, with dreams, thoughts, desires, and purpose that exists beyond the title of mom or dad. There is life after parenthood, not the logistical kind, the emotional kind. There's room for rediscovery, for hobbies you abandoned, for books you never finished, for relationships you've neglected, including the one with yourself. You don't stop mattering because your kids grow up. You stop mattering only when you believe your value was ever tied to their dependence on you. And I know how hard that is. It's easy to say, find your purpose, and much harder to face an afternoon with no one asking for your help. No one needing a ride. No one saying, "What's for dinner?" The silence can be deafening. But in that silence, there is also invitation, a space where something new can bloom, if you let it. You get to ask questions like, what excites me now? What did I put on hold? What have I always wanted to try, but never gave myself permission to pursue? Maybe it's art, maybe it's travel, maybe it's mentoring others, maybe it's simply sitting with yourself and getting to know who you've become, because you're not the same person who raised that child. You're wiser now. You've survived more than you thought you could. And that version of you, this version, deserves a life that isn't just a reflection of someone else's. Emotional dependence feels loving, but often it's fear in disguise. Fear of irrelevance, fear of loneliness, fear of no longer being needed. But you are needed, just not in the same way. And that shift doesn't mean you've lost them. It means you've succeeded. Let them live their story. But write yours, too. That's not abandonment, that's evolution. You are still here, still full of ideas, still capable of joy. You are more than who you were for them. You are who you are for you. And when you reclaim that, you don't lose connection, you strengthen it. Because love given freely, without conditions or invisible strings, is the kind of love that stays, quietly, deeply, forever. So stop waiting by the phone. Stop measuring love by proximity. And start measuring it by freedom, theirs and yours. You haven't been left behind. You've simply been left with a choice. And maybe, just maybe, now is the perfect time to choose yourself. He held it in his hands like it was made of gold. Though it wasn't, just a small porcelain figure. A ballerina with a cracked skirt and faded paint. It sat on the edge of a shelf for 40 years. He never really liked it. Didn't buy it himself. It was a gift from someone long gone. Someone who had mattered once, deeply. And so, he kept it, not because it sparked joy, but because it reminded him of a version of himself he wasn't ready to say goodbye to. We all do this, don't we? We carry things not for what they are, but for what they represent. A sweater from someone we no longer speak to, a stack of letters never reread, a souvenir from a vacation we barely remember but tell ourselves we loved. These objects become emotional placeholders, little anchors tying us to moments that have long since passed. And yet, we hesitate to let them go, as if releasing the thing means erasing the meaning. But it doesn't. The truth is, the memories live in us, not in the dust-covered item we keep in the back of a drawer. I used to hold on to everything, every gift, every note, every pair of shoes from a stage in my life I thought defined me. Until one day, I looked around and realized my space wasn't mine anymore. It was a museum curated by guilt, fear, and sentiment. Seneca once said, "No wind is favorable for the one who doesn't know where they're going." And I think part of knowing where you're going is learning what not to carry with you. Objects are heavy, not in weight, but in meaning. We assign stories to them. We give them power. That power can be comforting, but it can also become a burden. The ballerina on the shelf, she wasn't just a figurine. She was a symbol of obligation, a reminder, a guilt trip in ceramic form. But letting her go, that was liberation, not from the memory, but from the pressure to hold it through things. You are allowed to keep your past without preserving every object that ever touched it. You are allowed to free your space, and in doing so, free your mind, because clutter isn't just physical, it's emotional. And when we let go of what no longer serves us, we create room for something new. Not just new things, but new peace. You don't need the object to keep the meaning. The story is already in you. That's where it always was. and that's where it will stay. Not all relationships explode, some simply erode you, little by little, moment by moment, until one day, you wake up and feel tired before the day even begins. Not because you've worked too hard or slept too little, but because you've spent too much time in the presence of people who take more than they give. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing, but from absorbing, from carrying the weight of others' moods, expectations, complaints. It's silent, it's slow, but it's real. It's like a flower garden. In the beginning, it's vibrant, full of color and promise, but let a few weeds grow unchecked, and slowly, they begin to take over, stealing light, stealing space, stealing life. Relationships are like that. Some people lift you up, nourish you, encourage you to bloom. Others, they root themselves deep in your life and slowly drain you dry. Not out of malice, always. Sometimes it's just their nature. But even a weed doesn't have to mean harm to do damage. Carl Rogers once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." And I've come to believe the same is true in relationships. The moment we stop pretending, stop performing, stop shrinking, and start being honest about how certain people make us feel, then we can choose differently. We can choose quality over quantity, depth over density, peace over people pleasing. Seneca said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." That doesn't mean everyone else is disposable. It means your time, your energy, your life is sacred. You don't have to cut people out to protect it. You don't need a dramatic exit. You don't need to burn bridges. What you do need is boundaries, strong, quiet, non-negotiable ones. You can still love someone and choose not to let their chaos bleed into your calm. You can still check in, but not absorb, listen, but not fix, care, but not carry. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. I've had people in my life who were never violent, never toxic in the way the world defines it, but every time we talked, I felt smaller. Every interaction left me depleted, not empowered, and the hardest part wasn't walking away. It was admitting that staying was costing me something too precious to ignore, my peace. So here's the truth. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. Love them, forgive them, but protect your garden. Not everyone gets to stay. Some people were only meant to be part of your growth, not your forever. There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that comes not from what we do, but from constantly having to explain why we do it. Why you're still single, why you changed careers, why you cut someone off, why you didn't go to the party, why you chose peace over popularity. It's like your life becomes a courtroom and everyone else believes they're entitled to cross-examine you. And if you don't have the perfect answer, the rehearsed, polished, socially acceptable version, then suddenly your choices don't feel valid, not to them, and sometimes, not even to you. But here's what I've learned. You don't owe anyone a justification for your peace. You don't need a PowerPoint for your healing. You don't need a script to explain your silence. You don't have to make sense to people who have never had to survive what you've survived. And the moment you start living like your soul needs approval stamps to function, you lose. You shrink, you become a diluted version of yourself. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege comes at a price, and the price is discomfort. Because when you live authentically, people will misunderstand you, they will question you, they will label you, and some will walk away. But that's okay. That's the cost of choosing you over performance. That's what freedom feels like. There was a time when I bent myself into shapes just to fit into conversations I had no business being in. I laughed when I didn't feel joy, agreed when I disagreed, said yes just to avoid the guilt of no. I spent years contorting until I forgot what standing straight even felt like. But not anymore. Now I let the silence speak for me. Now I let my boundaries speak louder than my explanations ever could. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, and that's it, isn't it? Be the thing. Live the life, not for applause, not for validation, but because you finally realized that self-trust is louder than approval. That your path is sacred, even if no one claps for it. People will always have opinions. Let them. The truth is, when you stop justifying your choices, you start owning them. When you stop asking for permission, you start walking in power. And when you stop performing, you start living. Because the most radical thing you can do in this world is to live as yourself. Fully, unapologetically, authentically, and that is freedom. Letting go is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new one where peace isn't something you chase, but something you choose. And now, as we reach the quiet conclusion of this journey, I want you to remember each of the 7 things we've talked about not as losses, but as steps toward healing. Releasing other people's drama, so you can finally breathe without absorbing chaos. Saying no without guilt, so you can stop apologizing for protecting your own boundaries. Letting go of the past, so you can stop competing with a memory and start living your truth now. Freeing yourself from the emotional dependence on your children, so love can become freedom, not attachment. Releasing the objects that carry old emotion, so your space can reflect who you are now, not just who you were. Walking away from energy-draining relationships, so your life becomes a garden again, not a battlefield. And finally, no longer justifying your choices, because you don't owe the world an explanation for becoming whole. These aren't just habits to break, they are patterns that have held you hostage, and letting go of them is not a collapse. It's a rising. I've lived it. I've walked through every one of these thresholds, and I know how terrifying it feels to loosen your grip on what's familiar, even when it hurts. But here's the truth. Letting go isn't defeat, it's liberation. It's reclaiming your time, your voice, your presence. It's learning to stop carrying everything, and finally asking yourself, what if I wasn't meant to carry this forever? Rumi said, you were not meant to carry mountains. You were meant to climb them. That line lives in me. Because how many of us mistake endurance for strength? We think dragging pain with us makes us loyal. That carrying guilt makes us good. That clinging makes us loving. But real strength is unclenching your fist. It's walking away from what weighs you down. It's choosing to be light, not because life is easy, but because your soul is ready. So I invite you to join me, to not just think about freedom, but to live it. In the comments, write the words, "I live in freedom." Say it like a vow, like a declaration, because the moment you claim it, it starts to shape your life. This is your quiet liberation. No fireworks, no announcement, just a steady return to yourself. And trust me, that is where your peace has been waiting all along.